It's called major professional sports, not the Special Olympics. Please, don't expand the playoffs, NFL and Major League Baseball. Hi everybody, I'm Marky Billson. I know the feeling is expanding the playoffs will mean more big games. I think that there was a statistic that said that the NFL, if they expanded their playoff field to 7 instead of 6 teams in every conference, it could mean $150 million more revenue for the NFL. Oh, really? Well, how much do you lose by people saying, this Week 16 game isn't all that interesting? And I know what they're trying to do. Make the number 1 seed mean something. A little bit more than the number 2 seed. You look over the course of time, and number 1 seeds have not been a surefire thing to make the Super Bowl out of the NFL. Just take a look at this year when the Kansas City Chiefs won the Super Bowl, a number 2 seed, for instance. So, I do get that. But then again, with the Kansas City Chiefs have been hampered if they didn't have the number 1 seed, if they had to play another playoff game. Nobody knows. I mean, there have been 2 number 6 seeds, the Steelers in 2005 and the Packers in 2010, that went on to win the Super Bowl. Basically, those teams had suffered quarterback injuries, and so this was a second chance. But I got to warn you against this. Look at college basketball. Look at the National Hockey League. Look at the National Basketball Association. Basically, we think that their regular seasons are meaningless. Absolutely meaningless. And, last year, look, did we really need the 8-8 Pittsburgh Steelers in the AFC playoffs to make the Kansas City Chiefs run legitimate? Did we need that? I don't think so. I mean, were the 8-8 Steelers with Devlin Duck Hodges at quarterback really worthy of being considered to win the Super Bowl? I mean, because that's what the field is if you invite them into the playoffs, and they would have been the number 7 seed last year. What about the Rams? Now, I know the Rams had a winning record, and the defending conference champ and all that. They lost to the Steelers this year. I mean, are these teams really of an elite status? No, they're not. And I think one of the reasons why football is so popular is because it is the last sport where the regular season really does matter. I'll even give you this example. Last week of the season, the Miami Dolphins going nowhere, but they spoil the New England Patriots. They knock them out of the number 2 seed down to the number 3, where the Patriots promptly lose in the first round of the playoffs. And the Miami Dolphins haven't been much for a long, long time. But you know that victory against the arch-rival Patriots meant a lot to the Dolphins and their fans. And basically gave them a lot more hope for next year than, let's say, an 8-8 Pittsburgh Steelers berth in the playoffs would mean to their fans. Now, in the case of baseball, really, this would absolutely make baseball a cult sport. And I don't like to say that. I still think baseball might be the number 2 sport in America. I know the Major League Soccer commissioner came out this past week. Oh, we think we can be the number 3 sport in America here very shortly. We think we can pass the NHL and Major League Baseball. An interesting slight to NASCAR there, but nevertheless, basically, when it used to be that you had to finish first, but now can get away with finishing 5th in your league and still go on to win the World Series, like the Giants did in 2014, there's no difference between having the best record in baseball and having the 5th best. I mean, it really is somewhat meaningless. The Seattle Mariners, 2001, won 116 games. Lost in the playoffs, did not make the World Series. It was devastating to them. They haven't been back to the postseason. In fact, I think it mirrors In 1954, the Cleveland Indians won 111 games. That was the American League record before the Mariners in 2001. Indians were swept by the New York baseball Giants in the World Series. Willie Mays the big catch off of Vic Wertz in Game 1. Dusty Rhodes is pinch hitter extraordinaire, wins several games with pinch hits. And of course, for whatever reason, Al Lopez decides not to start Bob Feller in the fourth game, and the Indians are swept by the Giants in a big upset. Indians didn't recover, and there are some that might say they still haven't recovered because they haven't won a World Series yet. They've been to it 3 times, but it took them 41 years to make the playoffs and the World Series again. First place no longer matters in baseball. It used to mean everything. Now, Rob Manfred, he of the baseball needs change. Bud Selig was the same way. Look what it did to the sport. Now, they think 7th place should be as good as first, or at least this is what's being talked about. Baseball is not football. It's not basketball either. The worst teams in Major League Baseball can, have, and will beat the best teams in, say, a 3 to 5 game series. See it all the time. It's not uncommon for a last place team to take 2 out of 3 from a first place team. So why would we think that wouldn't happen with a number 7 versus a number 2? It absolutely would make the regular season, 162 games, meaningless. And, by the way, Phil Mushnick of New York Post is the one who came up with that line that I want to give him credit. He also came up with this line. In 2006, the St. Louis Cardinals had the 14th best record in baseball. They went on to win the World Series. The Cardinals also won the World Series in 2011. They had the 9th best record back then. And so here's the thing. Instead of making the real changes and really going back to what worked when baseball was the number 1 sport in America, and I think that is, you want to speed up the game, get rid of the DH. It speeds up the game. It'll take a half hour off the ball game. Look at the time of games in 1972. They were less than 2.5 hours. Now they're beyond 3. There are a few other contributing factors, but really, all those mid-inning pitching changes, really the extra offense, etc., that makes the games last longer. You want to speed up games? Outs are our friends. And, that's how you do it. First place, make it mean something. Don't equate it with 7th place. And really all that does is it doesn't stand up to the players' union. It doesn't make the changes needed for, say, medium to small markets to keep their stars for their careers, just like the New York Yankees have done with Derek Jeter, Mariano Rivera, etc. You don't see that with the Pittsburgh Pirates or the Cleveland Indians. Once their prime is about over, big money elsewhere. Go there. Yeah. These teams are now quad A teams. And you see a team like the Kansas City Royals, who wins the World Series in 2015, and then, just 3 years later loses 104 games. The Baltimore Orioles make the playoffs in 2016. They're a laughingstock, a last-place team that has to get rid of their star third baseman 2 years later when he's coming into his prime. This is not healthy for competitive balance. But, hey, you make 7th place as important as first, and you can get away with that. You don't have to stand up to the players' union. And that doesn't help. We're having Moneyball take over, and here's the thing. Moneyball isn't that exciting to watch. Moneyball means that your favorite player is going to leave via free agency very quickly. Moneyball means that your hitters, because they have on-base percentage on their mind, are going to take a lot of pitches. Moneyball increases and lengthens the pace of play. By the way, if you're curious, last year, that means that last year we would have seen the Boston Red Sox, 3rd place in their division. They'd be playing for a world title, and they'd be a legitimate contender because, Red Sox taking 2 or 3 from the Yankees, that could happen. Sure, it could. Arizona Diamondbacks finished 21 games behind the Dodgers last year. All it would mean is a little bit of seeding. Yeah, the Diamondbacks are in the playoffs. They could win it just as easily as the Dodgers could. It makes a 162-game season absolutely meaningless. Now, baseball realizes it's in trouble. They sold 11 million fewer tickets this past year than they did in 2007. The TV ratings are bad. The World Series is now getting beat by the NBA Finals, but let me just show you the lack of popularity for the World Series in recent times. The last time the World Series did a 30 rating, okay, that's like a Super Bowl rating. Actually, it's a bit lower, but the last time you could say the World Series, which, before the DH, I could show you pregame shows with Joe Garagiola. This is the biggest sporting event in America. Well, now it's a Super Bowl. That was, okay, maybe it was 50 years ago, but you've made all these changes, and they're not working. Case in point, last time the World Series did a 30 rating, 1981. Last time the World Series did a 20 rating, 1992. You might notice there weren't expanded playoffs back then. There wasn't, the playoffs are still going on? Why is the World Series being played in snow in Cleveland? You didn't have that back in those days. Last time World Series did a 15 rating, 2004. You had the story of the Red Sox finally winning the World Series. Since 2011, the World Series has received a 10 rating. It's a 10 rating only twice since 2011. Highest rating, didn't hit 13, was the Indians and Cubs. That the meek shall inherit the earth. Fans love the underdog. Big market with the Cubs. Indians also have a pretty big following. And that's the biggest rating, and it's a fraction of what baseball used to do. There really is no interest in pennant races anymore. And if you don't think that expanding the playoffs will make the World Series into the Stanley Cup Finals, and you don't think it'll make baseball into a cult sport, how many 11-man rosters do we see in high school baseball now? Yeah. Or how about this? Last year, Game 5 of the World Series had a 5.9 rating. Not so good. Game 7 of the Stanley Cup playoffs, that's a cult sport, a 4.9. If you're going to have as many playoff rounds as hockey, you're going to be a cult sport, baseball. Get back to where first place matters. Get rid of the wild cards, redo the divisions, end interleague play. Go back to the way it was. You were number one then. You're doubling down on Max Headroom, your new Coke. Stop it. I'm Marky Billson.